Welcome to the Meeple Syrup Show, designers discussing design. We're on episode 73. Go deep! All right, so I'm not referring to throwing a football. We're talking about going deep on design, talking about things like replayability, talking about things like deep strategy. But before we get into the show, I just have to first off offer an apology for last week. Tyler was ready. I was not. I was traveling from New York, and there was a bad storm, and had to take it quite slow, and so I was still traveling while the show was hopefully airing. And then Sen was even farther away, but we knew about this. Sen was in Mexico. What were you doing in Mexico, Sen?
I was celebrating the wedding of my best friend Jay Cormier to his new wife, Danielle Steele, not the author.
Not the author.
He could have got into so much money.
Yeah. So sadly, we missed you, and hopefully you missed us a little bit. We're glad to be back, and the meanwhile, the last couple weeks, we've been playing games, and I'm curious, Tyler, what have you been playing the last couple weeks?
The last couple weeks, I recently played one from a small company. I believe they're in New Jersey. I can't remember the company's name, but the game is called Flip Hue. And I love it so much because it's so simple but so different. What happens is everyone has a card. All the cards in the game are double-sided. So you get a goal card. So on the top, everyone can see I'm going green, but you don't know what my underside color is. Everyone holds 5 cards, but you're trying to get someone to have 5 cards the same color, but I'm playing from the front of my cards or the back of everyone else's. So if I get Sen to have 5 blue, I can go, bam, 5 blue, I won, even though it's on the back of his hand. So it was just like so cool and different. I just really, really liked it. And not so much playing games, but I got these made thanks to our friends at Custom Game Bits.
Very nice.
I got my fridge magnets made up, so yeah. That was really cool.
Yeah, Flip Hue is by Studio 202.
Yes.
And they are out of New Jersey. And if you go to their website, www.fliphue.com, I'll actually show it right now, you can see Tyler's wonderful review already.
But it's such
shameless self-promotion.
I know.
I didn't know it was there, but it's such a cool little game.
It's
so different.
It seems really interesting already, so we'll have to play that when next we meet.
Yeah, that sounds good. It's kind of a Hanabi-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah, but competitive, right? It's competitive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're trying to get somebody out by making sure they have X number of cards of the same color or whatever. Yeah. But they don't know that because they're flipped.
Exactly. Now there are cards that you can play to flip other people's cards, but
cool.
Yeah. So yeah, it's so different. But I'm like, it was like a little $8 game I picked up. I'm like, this is fabulous.
That's $8 well spent.
Oh yes,
that's cool. Daryl, what about you? What have you been playing lately?
Yeah, well, actually, it was pretty fun. I was away at the Toy Fair, so got to see a lot of kind of breaking out games, a lot of mass market type games. Got to see my baby Fantasy Baseball in the public. Also got to finally see the Out of Time Back to the Future dice game that was now officially public. So that was very exciting.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I'm super psyched. Actually, I was just asked today for the playtesters' names, and you're on there, Tyler.
Oh, well, thank you.
And what else? It was a productive show. I got one game signed at the show on location, which was pretty exciting.
That's cool.
So R&R Games signed co-design of Adrian Adamskew and myself. Artifact Stack is the working title. It'll probably be retitled. And then some really productive meetings with other publishers with our 7 Summits, also a co-design with Adrian. So that was really promising, and a couple meetings with IDW. So all in all, very productive. Got a consulting gig out of it as well while I was there. So I highly recommend the New York Toy Fair.
It's interesting because it's not really for hobby games.
It
Yeah.
is and it isn't.
Yeah, I know,
It's
right?
breaking in. It's fascinating. I went to a lot of after parties as well and meetings, and they were run by Spin Master, run by Hasbro, run by Mary Cousin and Chai Tag, and yet at all of these meetings, I was constantly meeting these big wigs from all these big companies, and they were looking to meet new designers. So
That's great. It's good to
pretty
know.
exciting time.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it does show that the games are coming more to the forefront, or board games, and it's not just toys, or it's not just a subsection, or toys lesser ugly cousin or whatever, right? So um, let's see. Oh, I actually did play lots of games. It's quite funny. I brought 50 pounds of games with me to Cabo.
Wow.
Yeah, I had to weigh them so that I could get them on the airplane. So 50 pounds of games. About 10 pounds of it was my poker set, clay poker
Nice.
chips. But yeah, we played poker. We played Dungeons of Mandem, which is Welcome to the Jungle. We played Tishu. We played Geisterblitz. We played Lift It. Lots of games, and then worked on a bunch of prototypes while we were there. So we could maybe write some of the trip off. I don't know. We'll see. Tax time is coming up. Yeah, tax.
50 pounds of games. That's like me taking my head in my beard and just boom.
Yes. Oh, yeah, and there's a bunch of campaigns that we're watching right now on Kickstarter. Daryl, you were heavily involved with one of them, and it's ending, I think, in 22 hours or something, right?
Yeah, it's coming real close to a pretty major number, but the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles campaign has been fantastic, and thankfully I got brought on to be a developer, and my game group is some of the playtesters for the different scenario books and rules, and we actually also got connected with Nerd Nighters, and we did a couple videos. So we did a live playthrough, which was really fun, and then we did a tabletop simulator via Steam live play with Kevin Wilson, the designer of the game as well. So hopefully they have a nice finish, and everyone will be happy with the incredible amount of stretch goals that are all packaged in that box.
It's kind of it's a very polarizing campaign right now. In terms, a lot of people are like, "Ah, man, I'm not. I pulled my bid, I pulled my thing," and it's interesting to see how people react to Kickstarters nowadays.
Yeah, especially the first week. But it's funny, since we've done those videos, it's actually just been pretty steady steam up. So
Yeah, I think the people who are upset were people who got out before the videos were posted, and a lot of people are saying they never even showed the rules, but they understand that it was not an IDW thing, it was an IP holder thing. But then they just didn't stick around long enough to see the playthrough videos, or the ones that were originally released were not, great. And then the ones that you guys did live, I think, really captured the feel of this is what the game actually plays like. So I'm hoping that people will at least take a second look at it when it hits the shelves in the stores. So
That's
TMNT.
funny, because there was I was at a local game store this weekend, and someone picked up another big box game like that had come out, and I was like, go online, back Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles instead. And the guy was like,
Yes.
sure. He pulled out his phone. I was like, sweet.
Would that be a game with like the initials GB?
I'm not saying, but maybe nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Oh, okay, cool.
no problem.
Yeah, so I mean, we were working on Powers and Godzilla and all that kind of stuff. So it's all coming to fruition. It's all coming together in the 30-degree sun, Cabo San Lucas on the beach playing board games. Yeah, that's what we did.
Yeah, because we had winter for 2 weeks while you were gone. Thanks.
I know,
Yeah,
and we came back to like
thanks.
plus 12 weather. I mean, I brought it back with me. I brought the weather with me, so you guys should be happy. And speaking of bringing things to the show, I think it's about time that we bring our guests into the mix. And the guests today are the wonderful, the multi-talented Kane Klenko, who is not Carter, that's just the name that shows up there, and the always wonderful to talk to Mr. Scott Gaeta of Renegade Games. So you guys may know Kane. Kane is a designer of lots and lots of games. Dead Men Tell No Tales, which has just been given a nice bump as one of the top 10 co-op games of all time out there, and it's really quite fun. I enjoy it. The kids like it. Fuse, which is coming out with this guy right here, I believe in. Well, it's out, isn't it?
It's
already
out.
out. Yeah, it's out. And a bunch of other games that Kane can talk about that. He can toot his own horn. And then of course Scott Gaeta of Renegade Games, who is the man behind that lovely R, making things happen from there. Second print already, hey?
Yeah. The game actually came out December 13th.
Oh, we did talk about this. That's right.
Yeah, and it ran out. We ran out of stock around the first week of January. So second printing just hit our warehouse last week.
Awesome.
So yeah.
All right, let's start with the questions. Daryl, you're up.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's jump into the breaking news. A really exciting time for designers to hear about this March promotion with Barnes & Nobles. For anyone who's not familiar, they selected 5 games and are committing to the month of March having their employees teach and demo these games. And one of them, we're always a great supporter of and love, is Lanterns. Scott, tell us a little bit about how that came together and what that might mean.
So this has been something that Barnes & Noble has been talking about for a while, probably on and off over the last year. And they decided, working with PSI, who is our distributor into that space, to give it a go. So they picked, I think it's 57 stores, and they chose 5 different games. Our game is actually slated for March 31st, so it's 5 Thursdays in a row. And yeah, so we're supplying games. They're going to be demoing in the stores. We also provided some promo tiles and things like that. And they're going to give it a try. I think it's a really good opportunity for hobby games in general. I mean, Barnes & Noble is really a nice gateway type store. They reach an audience that most hobby game stores don't reach. So it's exciting that they're going to start promoting hobby games that could really bring some new people into our market.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know Barnes & Noble from Indigo Chapters because Canada is a little bit different. But at least in Canada, I mean, I'll be honest, the games seem overpriced at stores. Like, you're looking sometimes $6, $7, $8, $9 more than going into a hobby shop. And I know it's great that they're reaching the mass market, but just the extra cost is like, their dollar to stretch.
Yeah, I can tell you here for Barnes & Noble, they pretty much just price straight MSRP. So if the game's supposed to be a $35 game like Lanterns, it's $35, which I kind of like as well because they're protecting, in some ways that's more friendly to the local hobby game store. So they're not competing on price, which is nice.
Right, and these are people who would most likely not go into a hobby game store to see what the price difference was, or even look online for like Meeple Mart or Amazon where the price is going to be drastically cut, right? So. Yeah,
but I mean, and I think that's true that they wouldn't go into a hobby store today, but the hope is that we reach enough people that some of those people then want to find a hobby store in their area that can supply a much broader selection and a more more informed staff that can help them in their game collection and pursuing that passion. So if we turn those people on into gamers that want to go beyond just what Barnes & Noble or a mass market store has to offer, I think that's great.
Right. I'm just going to follow that question up, Scott. Now I know it's going to be Barnes & Noble staff that are teaching the actual games in store, but did you guys give any hints on how to teach Lanterns to staff? How does that work out?
So actually we're providing a demo script.
Okay.
So we're providing a demo script and demo copies. And PSI, who's actually helping to organize this in all the B&N stores, they have a really good guy that's actually heading this up named Andy, he's kind of the rep that handles that channel for PSI. And he's also an avid gamer, really into it, so he's going to be very hands-on. So they're trying their best to educate that store staff so the consumer gets a good experience. And it's an experiment. We'll see how it goes.
Excellent.
Kane, first off, I'm going to apologize because due to the text, I am probably just going to call you Carter all night. So
that's fine.
I apologize for that. I have a question for you regarding your games. As a very prolific designer, how I don't know, your games are quite successful. You've done quite a few big hits. Do you, I don't know, how do you work yourself in the industry to be like, hey, I'd like to, get my game into something like that, or like, how do you simply design thinking, oh, I'm putting this out there, or do you, I don't know, I'm trying to word the question properly. Like, do you focus market your game, or just, hey, I'm going to make this game? Like, do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, I don't necessarily go into it with a specific publisher, or it's more a broader market. I kind of focus on family games overall. So that's kind of the feel of the game I'm going for. I don't do a whole lot of really heavy games. Dead Men Tell No Tales is my heaviest one so far. And then the upcoming Covert with Renegade is also more of a medium weight game. But 3 of my first 4 games are like very entry level family games. Actually, all 3 of those are real time games, which has sort of become my thing, I guess, not on purpose, just kind of happened. But
just fits your design style.
Right. So I go into it with the market in mind, to an extent that I'm looking to hit the family market, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think Kane is underselling himself. So in my experience, he actually has Kane, and part of the reason why I think I'm doing so many projects with him, I think he has a pretty good grasp of his target audience. It might not be a conscious thing, but his games, in my part of the reason why I like them is that they tend to fit the target consumer pretty well. Like Fuse, for example. Yeah, it's real time. It's co-op. It's strategy. But on the basic level, right, you can learn how to play that game in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And for that type of game, I think it kind of hits the mark nicely. So I don't know. Maybe you're not aware of this, Kane, but you do a pretty good job of matching up your design with the potential gamer skill level, and then again getting back to like that depth thing. Then it has more depth after that. So.
Well, I think that's something that designers have to consider nowadays because of things like Barnes and Noble. And the hobby stores. You have so many different ways to reach people that haven't gamed before. But do you sit there and consider, oh, I just want to make a fun game, or I have to target this, so maybe I can hit this mass media type effort, but then at the same time that might affect your development process, and it might grow into something that it wasn't meant to be. And anyway, Kane, you can comment on that, please.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely have the market in mind from the beginning, and I let that steer my decisions. That I know this has to be a product and not just something that I enjoy. I think one reason I've had some success with this is that what I enjoy is what the market is looking for. That's my best guess anyway. Because either that or I'm just really lucky because it's worked out with the first few. I think that's it.
I think I'd have to say that, Kane, you playtest a lot with your family, right?
Yes.
And your family is composed of you, your lovely wife, Carrie, and your 2 sons, correct?
My 2 sons, right.
And your sons are, if I remember, they're what, 9 and 11? How old are they now?
They're 10 and 13 now.
10 and 13 now. Okay, I met them when they were a little bit younger.
They were a little younger, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that, in that nucleus, your nuclear family, is really, what
that's my target market.
The market is, right? So, because you're playtesting with the target market, or a representation of the target market, I think your games hit that level. And so I know that Daryl and I playtest a lot with other game designers, and so maybe our games are actually hitting at that level for some things, right? And then we can bring it all down, whatnot. But a lot of times I think the depth of play that you get is something that evolves from who playtested the game with you. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would. And and maybe that's why all of my games, I think, even the heavier ones, like Dead Men Tell No Tales, like I said, that's been my heaviest game. That was actually my 10-year-old's favorite game.
Yeah.
So it still has an entry-level feel that it's not too difficult to get into. So yeah, that's probably a big part of it, just who I play with.
Scott, let's talk about depth and mechanics. And from the publisher side of you, when you're looking at a game, when you're looking at one of Kane's games or one of our games, any game, what to you says that's deep enough for the target market and not too complex? And what types of mechanics are you finding to be very much, blue chip for you in terms of hitting your target market, depth-wise?
Well, I mean, I don't think I can really narrow it down to specific mechanics. I think it probably, as far as hitting that wall where it might not work for a broader audience, really comes down to, for me, if there's almost too much in the game, right? Like, usually when I'm playing a game, I kind of try to boil it down to like what's the most fun part of this game and what's the experience. And I do like theme too. So if your mechanics are really supporting that theme and making it immersive, that goes a long way for me personally. Where I think we run into problems is where there's more layers of complexity just put on top of the game, and it doesn't necessarily add more to it. It's just adding more things on there for the sake of adding more things on there. And I know that's a very subjective thing, but in the context of being able to reach new people and not scare them away, I almost feel like you kind of need to tier that experience. So it's kind of hard to quantify in general. It's kind of more on a game by game basis.
Okay.
Jumping back to Kane, I actually got the pleasure of meeting you at GenCon, and it was amongst us running in all directions.
Yes, and, you and your giant bag of prototypes.
And you too. People don't understand. Like, Kane has a bunch of games that are really well polished, and he goes from meeting to meeting with all the major publishers. It's incredible. And one of them being Renegade, but also I'm amazed with all the other, really significant publishers that you've already worked with. And I'm curious, how did you, we have a lot of new designers watching. How did you initially, early on, before anyone knew who you were, because now you've established you can make great games, but before they didn't know you. How were you getting meetings with these established publishers, and what tips would you give new designers that are watching on how to get a meeting?
Sure. My first couple, well, the first one was Pressure Cooker, and that was with Rio Grande, and they actually held a couple of design contests back in 2009, 2010. Early 2010, I was laid off from work, and I decided I'd give this game design thing a chance. I had never designed a game before, but I was interested in it.
Yep.
So I started working on Pressure Cooker. Once I felt like it was a good game, I read on Board Game Geek or somewhere that Rio Grande was holding a contest.
Wow.
A design contest. So one of the regional areas was in Milwaukee, which is about 2 hours from me. So I joined that group, went in with my game. I ended up winning the regional, which got me a trip to the Chicago Toy Fair with a meeting with Jay Tummelson of Rio Grande. So, and he ended up liking the game and gave me a contract for it. So that was the first one. That's very non-traditional, so I don't know that I can give that as advice, but the second one was with Mayfair, that's Mad City. That one was actually a Protospiel event in Milwaukee. And I was there. I didn't know anyone from Mayfair. I knew someone was there, but I didn't even know who they were. And I was actually playing a different game, and they were interested, so they wanted to set up a meeting with me. And we played that game. They liked it. We talked about it for a little while, and then we were just sitting around chatting. And I pulled Mad City out of my bag. I'd only been working on it maybe 2 or 3 weeks at that point, so I was kind of hesitant, but I was like, we've got 6 people at the table, like a half hour left, so I just pulled it out and we played it, and they were like, "Okay, forget that other game. We want this one." So that's how I kind of got started. I don't know if I lucked into it. I was in the right place at the right time with both of those, and just happened to have the game type that they were looking for.
Too humble. You put yourself in those positions, though. No.
Yeah.
Create the opportunity.
That's right. Well, with the rest of them, I for sure did, because I've gone to GenCon now for the last 3 years. Now that I thought, okay, maybe I'm all right at this game design thing, I'll keep trying. So the last 3 years I've gone to GenCon, and I think I've played one game total over 3 years. I just go there and I set up meetings. I go booth to booth and say, hey, I've got these games, you want to see them? And that's how the rest of them have happened. That's how I met Scott, actually.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's right.
I have a question for you, Scott. Lanterns being the huge success that it has been, how did the merging between Foxtrot and Renegade happen for Lanterns?
Okay. So I saw the Kickstarter for Lanterns, and I remember going to the Kickstarter and watching the video and actually cursing and going. I really liked the game based on the video. I liked the look of it, and I liked the premise, and my initial gut reaction was, I probably would have published this game. And then the Kickstarter ran through and it finished up, and then I met Randy at BGGCon that November, about a month or so or a few weeks after his Kickstarter wrapped up, and told him that I really liked the game and I wanted to play it. And we played the game, and then we started talking about what his plan was after Kickstarter. And I kind of gave him my little take on Kickstarter. I said, Kickstarter is a wonderful thing, but it's also where good games potentially go to die, because everybody focuses on their Kickstarter and getting funded and getting the game out the door, and then there's no plan afterwards. And Randy kind of agreed, and he said, yeah, I did Relic Expedition last year. Oh, I made a comment. I said, yeah, everybody goes and they do their Kickstarter, and they print 500 extra copies, and then they wind up having a bunch of copies left over in their garage. And he said, yeah, I have a bunch of Relic Expedition at my garage. So, what do you think? So we worked out a deal really pretty quickly where we would co-publish the game, and from once he was done fulfilling his Kickstarter, then I would kind of take it and do my thing with it and get it into broader distribution and really give it a lot of marketing and attention and launch it from there. So, okay. And it went pretty well.
Mm-hmm. I definitely think that's one of the strongest things that Renegade is bringing to the table in terms of getting games like Lanterns, which is a great game. And it's a long storied history with Daryl, myself, and Chris and Lanterns, and before it was Lanterns and whatever.
Right.
That what you've added, the value that you've added as a publisher, has really got it to places where it may not have got with another publisher, even though it's still probably going to be the same game. And so that's kind of that area of depth that you add to it. Going back to Kane and talking about depth and mechanics and game design, how do you keep something interesting, deep, enough changing so that people want to play the game again, but simple enough that it does hit that target audience that you're looking at in terms of a family-oriented game? What are you doing differently?
Well, maybe I'm not the best person to ask, since a lot of my games are more the entry level. But as far as replayability, like with Fuse, there's a certain amount of depth there. With the communication between players and things like that. But it's more about keeping the time, the length of the game, matching the depth of play.
Good idea, yeah.
If it's a lighter game, it can't go too long, and if it's a deep game, you don't want it cut off too short. It's about finding that balance between time of play and the depth of play, I think, that keeps people coming back for it.
That's an excellent point. Daryl, I think you're next, right?
Yep. A question for Scott. I've noticed, obviously, you have some games that you have discovered, directly from Kane, for example. Others you've built through relationships, partnerships. You mentioned, for example, Lanterns. I have Snowtails, for instance. I think of that, and I wonder about that and other games. Do you see Renegade building some connections with other publishers or partnerships? And are there any games that you'd like to highlight that are coming out that people don't know about yet, or is this a new trend?
Sure. Well, I mean, for me, I think it's going to be a combination. Like Snowtails came about because I really liked the game, and it was out of print. So I looked up the guys, the Fragor brothers over in Scotland, and I met them at Essen 2 years ago and said, I want to bring the game back. And they said that would be awesome. So that's where that came about. Coming up, so I'm doing another collaboration with Foxtrot with Randy. I really like working with Randy. And that's kind of what it boils down to as well. I don't want to do lots of co-publishing arrangements. I want to work with people that I work well with, and I work really well with him. So we're doing the same sort of thing with World's Fair 1893. It's coming out in May. Yeah, we're really excited about that one. It's a pretty awesome game.
Another amazing designer, Alex Covert.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So we're doing that, and then I'm also working with Andrew Federspiel, who I had met years ago, right after he kind of left his old gig in the video game world and was starting to get into tabletop. And we met, and then I didn't see him for a year or two, and then we connected again, and I'm going to partner with him on Apotheca because I like that game as well.
And you guys also have Knee Jerk as well?
Yeah, so that kind of came after the fact. As part of our relationship, he said, could you take Knee Jerk over and try to get it more exposure. So
right.
Yep.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tyler, you're next.
I do. I have two. I have the same question for both gentlemen, and I don't want the show to always be, oh hey, let's get your thoughts on this, and we're warm and huggy. So I have a question for both of you, and I'm not by no means wanting to offend or whatever, but I would like. First, Kane, to address the art on Mad City, because I love the playability of Mad City. I find the art to be very bland. I find the game could be visually enhancing if it had different art. And then my question to our other guest is, with Kitty Paw coming out, being by the same designer as Cat Tower, and two different companies having the same look and feel but very different games. So I just I would like to address those two things. So Kane, to you first.
Well, how do I answer this? Let's just say I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, art is very important to me in games, and that's something actually I've really enjoyed working with Scott. He's allowed me to be the art director on Covert coming up. I did the art direction on Dead Men Tell No Tales with Minion too.
Okay.
So
because I have played Mad City when it came out, I was like, oh, because I love tile games, and I was like, holy mackerel, you're picking stuff and you're putting it. It's just visually, it was not appealing to me, and I was just like, oh, this game could blow up, but I didn't know if that was a thing on your end or a Mayfair thing, because I will be honest, sometimes Mayfair doesn't have the best art, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'll just say I did not have control over that one.
All right.
Well played, kid. Well played.
So then my other question to Scott, with the whole Kitty Paw Cat Tower.
Sure.
What's
Okay.
the story there?
Well, the one thing I'll say is that Kitty Paw has ears.
That differentiates it automatically.
Game changer right there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, ears, man. No. So some people might not realize this. Azza, who's the game designer, is also the artist.
Okay.
So
he's a wonderful artist.
He is, and so the art on Kitty Paw is actually by Azza, who also designed Cat Tower.
Yeah.
So I mean, and I love the packaging. I love the art. So
I didn't think it was a bad thing by any means. It's just that two different game companies. Obviously, it's the same designer, same style, It's just you don't see that crossover like that very often. So.
Yeah. No, I agree. The timing was interesting. It just kind of worked out the way it did. We're doing Oz's next. We're actually doing Doggy Go this summer, which is a slightly different gameplay, but kind of in the same spirit as Kitty Paw. Mm-hmm. And then we have something new that we're working with him on for hopefully Christmas time. So we'll see.
Oh. He makes some very cool stuff. So I'm glad to see the Asian market coming to North America. Being Asian and all that. That's very important to me.
Yeah, Hack's very excited on the discussions, saying he knows him and he lives in Taiwan, part of the Taiwan design crew. So.
Right. Yeah.
So there's a question here from FC Effect. Well, not really a question. He said, "Oh, Kane, you went to Protospiel Madison, didn't you? I think I recognize you." So, yeah, just talk about Protospiel, Unpub, conventions. Why it's so important for designers to get out there and do that. How did it change your game up?
I think it's just getting a lot of eyes on your game all at once, and it's a lot of designers. They know what they're doing. They know how to pick apart a game. They know how to maybe see things that you're not seeing. Just getting new eyes on it. If you play a game over and over, you might get stuck in a rut. You get new eyes on it. They're going to come at it from a different angle and see things that you didn't. Myself, my wife is actually my best playtester. Scott knows Carrie. She, better than anyone I've met, even at a Protospiel, she can pick apart a game and do development like no one I've seen. But still, going to these events with all these designers, like I said, just getting all those different eyes in such a short amount of time, just you can iterate quickly, play again, make changes, and just keep playing over and over.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome, because I can't even get my wife to decide what we're going to do for dinner, and here you are having her your playtester.
So, actually, talking about playtesting, Scott, can you tell us a little bit about how you go about once you're interested in the game? What are kind of next steps that, each publisher does things differently. What are things that you like to do when you're interested in the game, and how do you playtest?
So it kind of depends, but in general, I actually have 3 remote playtest groups that I use as blind groups. Each one has a lead developer, and then the playtest players that they play with don't actually get to see the feedback from the other 2 groups. And they rotate games between the 3 different groups. 2 of the groups are kind of general. One of the groups specializes probably in like heavier games. But I like to get their feedback as well, even for a lighter game. And I find that kind of blind playtest structure works pretty well. And that kind of comes back from my history back in the day of CCGs. That's the way we used to run CCG playtesting, is we had half a dozen blind groups around the country that weren't allowed. They actually didn't know who was who in other groups. You weren't allowed to tell people that you were a playtester. So it worked pretty well.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. And Kane, how about you? When you're playtesting with your wife and children or other designers, how do you ensure that you're getting the right feedback? And how does your wife give you the exact feedback you need every time? What's the magic?
Well, I don't know if I'd go that far. It's not always the right feedback, and I guess I'd say you have to know what you want the game to be going into it as the designer.
Mm-hmm.
Because some feedback is not what you need. It's not necessarily taking the game in the direction that you want it to go. It might be what that person thinks it should be, but as long as you know what you want the game to be, you can kind of pick apart what feedback is going to help and what you can kind of put aside. And sometimes even feedback that doesn't take the game where you want it to go will trigger something in my thoughts and just take me in a new direction, even though it wasn't exactly what they said. It's just getting all different opinions and different eyes on the game can trigger and spark new ideas.
Excellent. Tyler.
Yes. Hi, Sam.
Hi,
Oh.
Tyler.
So I was just like listening to him and like, yeah, that's a good point. And then it's just, wow, he's right. Question for our other distinguished guest, shall we say? With 2016 quickly approaching upon us, and you guys always having things in your back pocket, what surprises might you have from Renegade coming up?
Oh, Well, we haven't announced any games that are coming out past June.
But you could hear. Oh.
It's true. I can tell you that we're working on another game with Kane for fourth quarter, potentially, but probably can't say too much about it yet. We're still working out the theme and some of that stuff. I am working on a game right now that Kane is actually working on as the art director, but it's not his game.
Oh, that's interesting.
Cool.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, getting back to art, like art is really important to me in presentation. So Kane has done a really good job art directing his own products with me. So he's actually art directing a game that we're working on with Jordan and Mandy Goddard.
Oh, we know this game.
You know this game.
So are you? Is it going to be the game that
You
the
can
card game?
well, I can tell you that the name is probably changing, and the theme is the same, but the way you've seen that theme before is not what you're going to see later.
Okay, you just totally confused me, and that's okay. Totally confused me. But no, that's kind of funny because I think I told him to go talk to you. I'm pretty sure I said you should go talk to Scott. So
Yeah,
that's good that they did.
actually,
Okay.
That actually has a pretty funny story at GenCon, is how that.
Actually, I would love to hear this story from your perspective.
From mine?
Because I was with them many meals.
Okay, well, were you there Saturday night when a certain someone came by?
I heard about it right afterwards because they talked to me about it.
Okay, well, I only have their version of the story, so I'm just taking what they told me, and I can repeat it.
I was hoping you were there.
No, I wasn't there. So, I mean, I can tell it.
Sure.
Okay. So I had been talking to Jordan and Mandy about their game at GenCon. I actually met with them Thursday afternoon before the speed dating thing, because I just had I had a feeling that a lot of people were going to look at their game during speed dating, and
we highlighted it at Origins, so they were already getting ready to show the world at GenCon.
Yep. So I met with them. I told them I kind of told them on the spot that I liked it and I wanted to do it. So there's certain times where there's just things that click with me, and I'm like, yeah, let's do this. This is different. I can visualize, what this is going to look like and what we can do with it. Yeah. And they said, well, we're going to do the speed dating thing, and I shopped it around, and I said, I totally don't blame you. You should do that. It's in your best interest. And they kept coming back. We met again on Friday, and we played the game, and then we met again on Saturday, and we played the game some more. And they said, well, we have some interest from some other people. And I said, I totally understand. Let's touch base in a couple weeks, or when we get back from GenCon. And they said, yep, we'll do that. And you're definitely one of the people on our short list that we'd like to work with, and blah, 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 right? But I agree, too. They should explore all their options. And then I guess they were playing Lanterns, right, on Saturday night.
Yep.
Yeah, they're in one of the hotel bars. And Will Wheaton walked by, and Will said, oh, Lanterns, I love Lanterns. It's one of my favorite games right now, which we had kind of already heard through the grapevine that he was digging Lanterns. So, and they said, oh, we have another game or something, and they showed them their game, and he said, oh, this game looks cool too. You should talk to Renegade. This looks like a game that Renegade would play. And then went on his way, and then Sunday morning they came by and they told me the story. And we talked a little bit more, and then they came back right around lunchtime, and they said, all right, we'll just do the game with you. So thank you, Will Wheaton, for the endorsement. It was very nice.
If you're watching.
Yeah. I don't know if Will watches us, but whatever.
Maybe. He might.
I don't watch him that much, so.
Now I have a question for you, Kane. Since Scott already spoiled my question of what you're doing, because we know you're working on art direction, what else are you doing?
Yeah, art direction for that game, and then I'm really focused on one game right now, and I don't know how much I can say about it, but um, it's a dexterity game, which is something new for me. Kind of it's a cooperative strategy dexterity game, I guess is how I describe it. That's really been my focus the last few weeks. So I've kind of put other things aside just because I'm really excited about this game. So anytime that I have any time for playtesting, that's what I'm pulling out right now.
So is that do your kids get bored of playing the same game over and over? Mine do.
Yes.
So
Yes.
What? They won't be slave labor?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually they are trying to get back at me now, and they're starting to design their own games. So last night Carter had
Nice.
the table full of cut up scraps of paper, and he wanted me
You gotta do your
playtest.
time now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I gotta do my time.
is it the Gladiator game or is it a different one?
No, it's a different one.
Did he give up on the Gladiator game?
No? Did
Good.
I talk to you about the
Awesome.
Gladiator game?
Yeah, because that one sounds cool.
It does. Well, Scott has that one right now. We'll see.
Oh,
what
seriously?
Yeah. Wait, I was confused. I was like, is this a new Gladiator game? What did I
No.
miss?
Same old,
No.
same old.
Okay.
Very cool, very cool. Scott, where do you see Renegade going in terms of, your market share, your depth? What is your target? I know you seem to be looking at families. We've talked about mass market. We've talked about hitting that $10, $15 price point end cap type game with you guys as a Renegade product. So is that all that Renegade's going to do, or do you think you're going to move up in terms of strategy level, et cetera, et cetera? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of definitely our starting point, and it's our sweet spot right now.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have some stuff in the works, probably into 2017. My trip to Nuremberg was very productive.
Nice.
Put it that way.
So we'll get to hear about that sometime at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I mean, and really the bottom line for me is I want to make games that are accessible and grow the hobby. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be an entry level or a so-called gateway game. But if it's a heavier game, it also has to have all the qualities that give it the possibility to appeal to a broader audience. And sometimes that's not gameplay, that's art, right? And the presentation of the game as well. I'm really not a fan of what I call dreary Middle Ages.
You mean German games?
Yeah,
German
well, I just think we have enough games.
King Kalis is upset.
I thought we were all in our dreary Middle Ages.
Well, speak for yourself. But no, I think that theme is fine, but okay, enough. If we're going to reach a broader audience, we have to be a little bit more contemporary. So and push the envelope, try new things.
Absolutely. I'm gonna jump this question to Kane. I'm curious because we talked a little bit about we're talking about entry level or gateway games and even games that are at least accessible, even if there's a little meat on the bone. I'm curious because I'm looking at this wall of games behind you, and there's some chewy stuff back there. There's some deep games there. I'm curious for yourself. Are there any deeper games or designers out there that you really appreciate what they're doing? And your sweet spot, but you would point to as designers maybe on the up and coming, or that keep making great kind of medium to heavy games. Who would you point to as designers that are inspiring to you, but also you leave it to them?
They haven't done anything. Well, Knizia has always been my favorite designer, although he hasn't done a whole lot recently. I have dozens of Knizia games, and his designs, just the way he can take depth with just a few pages of rules, and they're games that I haven't played in years, but if I pulled them out now, I would still know how to play them.
Yeah, they're elegant, yet they're meaty.
Yeah, they just stick with you. So that would be number one. More recently, Stefan Feld, I really haven't played many of his games, Castles of Burgundy is one of my favorites. I have a few that I haven't played yet that I really need to get to the table, but just the way he used dice in that game, and I've read the rules and watched videos for others, that's kind of what inspired me to design Covert, which has a kind of a new dice placement mechanic. It was just kind of thinking about different ways to use dice and the way that he did that, trying to come up with something new, which also spun off Fuse as a new way to use dice. And this other game that Scott was talking about that we can't talk about came out of that.
Not yet. We'll talk about it on a future episode.
Yeah.
Ooh, that'd be a good name for a game, the game we can't talk about.
Yeah.
Oh, you played the game we can't talk about?
I like it. I'm writing that down.
Okay, there you go. Credit to Tyler Anderson.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it Tyler's question?
Sure, I have a question. Actually, I had the pop bottle go off in my head because when you were talking about simple design and just people are talking on the chat about gateway games, someone putting rules to 52 pickup. You take your deck of cards, you throw it down as a simple dexterity game, but you can get points for picking up cards in order. If they're face down, you're like, oh, I'm going to take a chance that this is what I need for my set or my run that I'm getting. I mean, you look at something like the game where you're putting 100 cards from 1 to 100, someone could put rules to 52 pickup, you'd be like, holy mackerel, they actually made this work. So, yeah, one of you four do that because I know that's what you guys do.
Was that a question?
No, that was more just, that was my light bulb thought. So,
oh, you're explaining what the pop bottle was.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Scott, Amanda asks, how long does your average game spend in playtesting and rules tweaking before you feel that it's ready to be out there in the world?
Well, in general, from the time we usually finalize a deal and the time the game hits the shelf, on average, it's about 10 to 12 months, sometimes longer, generally not less. The actual playtest window and development window, it can go anywhere from 30 days to 6 months, to be honest. It really just kind of depends on the game and where the game was when we first got it. And it also depends on the designer. So some designers are part of that process and really good in that process, and others don't want to be part of that process. They kind of like to turn it over to a publisher and be done with it. I think those are rare, but they do exist. So.
For sure. Going back to Kane, actually, on the design process, I'm curious. Do you find? I mean, you told one story of like pitching a game that was only a few weeks in, but from what I understand, usually you have a game kind of at a point where you're pretty confident with it now before you're showing people. I'm curious, and maybe it's different with Scott or different people you have good relationships with, but curious to hear what the timeline is for you when it comes to the design process, because every designer is different, and yet everyone has this misconceived idea that you could design a game overnight, but it's quite a process. Could you maybe walk through for you, what is the inception to pitch-worthy timeline?
For sure, it depends on the game. For instance, Covert, it was in December of 2014, I think, is when I had the initial ideas. And that's the only game I worked on. I mean, I put all of my effort into that one game. And I talked to Scott about it, I think, the first time in March. So it was about 4 months. It wasn't 100% done, but it was at a point where I felt like I could at least start talking to a publisher about it, because I knew there was something there. It was 95% done. It needed some balancing and things like that, but that was about 4 months for that one, and I'd say that's fairly average. I mean, some games I work on for years. Like I pulled one out yesterday that's been bugging me for 2 years, and I haven't gotten it done. So every game is different. I have another game coming out later this year that was probably a week or two in my head, and then I don't think it changed from the first playtest to the published version.
You mean the one that we're doing?
Slap It.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You can say it.
I probably shouldn't have said that.
No, that's okay. It's all good.
Apparently, there's a game with slapping in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, so like Covert was a good one where, if anything, like I probably slowed down the process. When he showed it to me in March, I really didn't get a chance to spend a lot of time with it until July. So over the 4th of July week, I actually had a lot of people come in and spend the week at my place, and all we did was play test prototypes all week, and we spent a lot of time with Covert. But that's the other limiting factor that sometimes the designer has no control over. The publisher only has so much bandwidth.
Right. And Scott, are you pretty much a one-man show-ish type thing?
Ish. We actually are announcing next month we're hiring. We have somebody starting that's going to be coming on board full-time. But yeah, it's me. I have a finance person who is my wife. That's her background.
That works.
Fine, so nice. Yeah, so that's kind of good. But she does that pretty much full-time as well. And then really it's, I call it the cast of a million contractors.
Right.
I do have a graphic designer that's practically a full-time person. She's like my best logo and packaging design person. So I have a handful of others that we use as well. So yeah, we're a small operation. A lot of hours.
Mm-hmm. But it seems worth it because I mean you're a super happy guy.
Yeah, most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time.
You're
When you're not
preaching to
sick.
the choir, brother. Preaching to the choir.
Let's talk about last questions because that is the time. We were running out of time.
Oh, don't put the pressure on me. I forgot the last question a couple weeks ago.
Okay, so Tyler,
Yes.
you have to think of a last question. Your last question will be to Kane,
Okay.
and I'll do my last question first to Scott.
Perfect.
Okay,
Can I ask a question?
Yeah. You ask a question. This is neat.
Tyler, how
Yes.
do I get one of those awesome magnets?
You can send me a message through Facebook or Twitter, and I will get stuff sent to you. What I'm trying to do actually is send a bunch to one person, and then they know 4 other people I know, so now I'm not sending out 10 envelopes. So I'll send you a whole bunch because you probably know people I know and say, oh yeah, Tyler sent this, here you go, and pass it
There you
on.
go.
But yeah, one coming your way, no problem.
Those were sweet. Okay, cool. All
Cool.
right, I'm done.
All right. And before we do that, I just wanted to give a shout out to Armada Games in Tampa, Florida, for saying their name wrong and thinking it was Amanda. Sorry. So if you're in Tampa, Florida, go to Armada Games. So Scott, last question to you about depth, about replayability, about all that kind of stuff. How do you ensure that people are going to play Renegade Games more than the 1.25 times that average, games get played? How do Renegade Games get to the table more often?
I mean, I think that part of, at least right now with what we're doing, part of our sweet spot is that the games are quick and that, but they have that kind of replayability factor in the form of, man, what if I just did this one thing differently? Or what if, Fuse is a perfect example. Fuse is all about teamwork. So what if we just tried again? We learned how to work together. What if we pass the bag a little faster? And I think that's definitely a quality that we look for in playtesting. One of the questions that we ask our playtest groups, our leads that are kind of gathering the feedback, is if their group wants to play again or feels like they have to play again. And if the feedback is, yeah, they kind of did their job and they played it 3 or 4 more times, but they weren't enthusiastic about it, that's something we really put a lot of weight towards. If they're like, yeah, that we couldn't get it off the table and everybody stayed for an extra hour after the session was over, that gets really high marks for me. So
very cool.
You try your best, right? And so far it's working okay, but.
And my question for Kane is, what part of the process actually brings you joy the most? Is it coming up with a new idea? Is it going through the playtesting phase with your family? Is it walking through a convention and seeing someone play one of your first games and be like, wow, people are still playing this? Or is it all one big package? Which part stands out to you?
I'd say I enjoy the entire process, other than making the prototypes. I think it's that initial spark of an idea, though, that gets me the most excited. Probably both ends of the spectrum. So that first spark, and then when the game is done and you're seeing your finished product and people are enjoying it, going online and seeing people around the world playing my games and enjoying them, I'd say that is the thing that brings the most joy.
Cool. Very cool.
Cool. Well, thank you both to Scott and Kane for spending an hour with us chatting about board games and design and the industry. We really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and experience with us. We want to encourage our viewers, if you see a game by Kane, you know it's going to be a great game that you can try out and have fun with, so pick that up at your local game store or online if you know a great online game store that you want to support, or Barnes & Nobles maybe. I mean, hey, Lanterns is going to be there. So, and we want to thank Renegade Games President, CEO, I don't know what the official title is for Scott, but Mr. Renegade Games himself, for being here and, again, answering questions. We want to encourage our viewers, if you have guests that you'd like to see on future episodes, or if you have questions or comments, please don't hesitate. You can reach us on Twitter at Meeple Syrup. You can find our website, themeeplesyrupshow.com. You can find us on YouTube, etc. And we just look forward to seeing what games you might come up with next. Next week we have Gord Hamilton, and we might try to sneak on Joey Vigor and Jeff Sidak, the two that we missed out on last week. So we'll see if we can make it work to get all three all-star guests on next week. Till then, have a good week.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Dad.